start our last panel of the day. Alright, so you made it to the end. Here we are. We're about to have our last panel of the day. I hope y'all are excited. We're about to end on an absolute bang. We got an absolute all-star cast for this final panel, and I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our speakers right now. So at first, our panel host, we have Benjamin Leff, who is an expert token sale community manager with experience in growing and managing large online communities across multiple social media channels. Founder of Leff Ventures, Ben is highly knowledgeable in creating grassroots excitement for new blockchain investments by leveraging years of experience building extensive industry relationships. Ben is a firm believer in the power of creating a project around the needs of the community, which varies from traditional business model in the blockchain world. This comes from his experience in consulting several ICO blockchain projects, from Honduras to the United States to Vietnam and the UAE. From volunteering as a Goldberg ambassador for Liquid Exchange to co-hosting the Houston Bitcoin meetup with over 2,700 local members, Ben believes that mass adoption lies in the hands of the community at large. Next up, one of our panelists, Joe Blackburn, is currently the president and co-founder of Crypto Coin Trader. Joe has been involved with many projects with blockchain and cryptocurrency space. The explosion of the cryptocurrencies since his introduction in 2014 has allowed him to catapult momentum into the soon-to-be-released website. Social media, community management, and community engagement have been the forefront of Joe's expertise in the blockchain space. And last but not least, we have Jacob Pouncey. Jacob Pouncey is the go-to guy at Saxo Bank. He informs the organization and his clients on the rise of this entirely new asset class. He's in pursuing a master's degree in the management of innovation and business development at Copenhagen Business School. He enjoys applying his previous work experience and academic knowledge to the blockchain space in his current role. He believes that the blockchain represents the most significant advancement in network technology since the internet. Most transactions that currently take place and future transactions over a digital medium will be done on top of the blockchain technology. So without further ado, I want to introduce this final panel.
Thank you, Richard. So that was a really long introduction for myself, and I just want to shorten it very quickly or briefly. So what I do in the space, I touched on ICOs and STOs earlier, and my participation in them for those of you that are here. And I've been in 4 or 5 now, and I help do social media management for a couple dozen clients at this point. But more than anything, what Rachel was actually just talking about, I'm very focused on my own company on mass adoption. She does a lot of she does what I can't do on that side, the marketing, getting the word out. Like she said, 30% of her time is making sure that, the search engines are picking up the correct terms, and she's up at the front of Google pages and things like that. And what I do kind of in the background is I'm the guy working with companies that have blockchain ideas or that need funding or just want to, for lack of a better word, what we call in the industry, tokenize their project, which is simply building out their business model in a blockchain format. So that's kind of a little bit about me. And guys, I'd like to get to know a little bit more about y'all so that way I can gear some questions.
Yeah, so Richard did a pretty good job of introducing me. I've been in the space since 2012, roughly, and then recently started taking my hobby sort of full-time at the bank, and sort of just being on the border between traditional finance and this new sort of finance. And that's sort of a lot of informing the bank and basically clients on this emerging asset class and trying to frame it as an asset class, because it's hard to sort of teach people about something that's completely new without framing it in the context of something else. But this technology is unlike any other technology. It's sort of a summation of all these technologies that becomes greater than the parts. And it's really sort of hard to explain that. But.
Cheer! The wait is over! What's up, everybody? I'm Joe Blackburn. Me and Ben Barlow, he's over there filming, didn't want to get on stage. We founded a Facebook group 2 years ago next month called Crypto Coin Trader. Everybody pull out the phone real quick. Everybody. I will come down the aisle, pull out your phone, hold it up. Where you at, Ben? Okay. All right. Look at it. What you have in your hand is the greatest resource to ever exist. Ever. like it's a smartphone. Think about if Christopher Columbus had an iPhone, right? Or a Samsung S10 with a cryptocurrency wallet. All right, that we're in a situation where socially we have access to everybody, and everything. It's never been done like this before in the whole world. And we're at the forefront of the blockchain side. On Facebook, it's just Facebook. On Twitter, it's just Twitter. But these are how you reach people. And this is what I've been able to captivate with the help of Ben Barlow, and with amazing moderators, some of which are here. You know how I know mass adoption is almost here? Because Mr. Joe Rollins from Central Mississippi asked if there were turkeys so he could go turkey hunting on his central land. All right? That's how you know. And I know Mr. Joe and his wonderful son Forrest back there. But he's here at this conference, right? So again, you know, I don't have a lot of accolades. I didn't go to school here or there. I'm literally just someone who loves the space, and I put myself in a position to do Facebook with all y'all. Hopefully you're part of my group. Should have made you when you had your phone out and join the group, but we'll do that next. Anyways.
Awesome. So I hope that gives you all a better understanding of who we are up here. And I know the panel is the future of cryptocurrencies, which can go for years. So I'm going to try to surmise this as quickly as possible and get as many questions from you all in as we can. So firstly, guys, it seems like we have a kind of a good mix from the finance and the social media side. And I had sent y'all some questions that are at this point completely irrelevant to conversation, but I do want to change it. I talked about security token offerings earlier, STOs, and how regulatory compliance in that section is really the overarching face of the SEC right now. That's what they're trying to make, they're trying to classify Bitcoin and all these other things as utilities versus securities. And from a finance perspective and from a regulatory perspective, do you see that as a barrier to entry for everybody out here who doesn't know about Bitcoin or wants to get into it and is worried about the taxation or things like that? You know, a lot of questions that I get when working with digital currency exchanges, the word Coinbase was brought up, is, you know, is it legal? A lot of people don't even know that. Can I link my bank account to it? So is a lot of this stuff that you deal with regularly in your space?
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, I have to say that my opinions are mine only, and not the views of the bank. Just to get that disclaimer out the way, the finance side. I think regulation from at the bank is really looking for regulation in this space, because once it's regulated, then we know how we could classify it and, you know, market it and trade it. So the lack of regulation is holding a lot of institutions back. That's for certain. And maybe even some, you know, retail investors are sort of holding back because they're unsure, and, you know, they're waiting for, you know, the institution to sort of license it as something, you know, okay getting into, but it doesn't need that to survive. I mean, it has survived already without the help of regulation, and regulation is not needed to get us to where we need to be in this space, but regulation could help, and I mean, it could also hurt, but the hurt that regulation can do to it will only set it back maybe a few years, but it is inevitably going to sort of grow into the asset class that we know it can be. That's a lot of different reasons. One which I'll point out is the lending effect. It's basically saying that if something's been around for X number of years, most people will say, okay, it will be around another X number of years. So say if a book has been in publication for 5 years, so you go to someone, you say, hey, will it be in publication in 5 more years? And you say yes. And as something stays around longer and longer, you will begin to think that it will be sort of a cornerstone or institution longer and longer. So like you say, the Bible's been in print for, you know, 2,000 years, whatever. And then, but anyway, you can say it's going to be around another 2,000 years. So it's really, this is going to start to ingrain in people's mind that this asset class is here to sort of stay with or without regulation. And you know, it really doesn't matter. SEC can...
They'll set the tone with whatever it is, but we'll adapt and stuff like that. So one of the messages I was hoping to get across there was, you know, for those of you that are worried about regulations and things like that, you've heard it several times today, buying Bitcoin is something that you can easily do, and learning about it is as simple as visiting a couple of Facebook channels. And I really, Joe, would you go into more about that and what you do on your channels and your groups?
Sure. First off, I thought it was a good answer, Jake. I want to touch base on something he said. You know, right now, if you go and you ask, actually, I'll ask you all, who here has ever invested into the stock market? Raise your hand. You ever invested in the stock market? All right, I know I have, right? Who here has a 401k? Right? Okay, so what the point I'm just making right now is, did you make the investment into your 401k physically? Did you go and like deposit the money into your 401k, you know, holders, you know, account so that they can invest for you? No. The idea of the stock market and why the stock market is so easy and so respectable is because everybody does it. We accept it as normal. If crypto was somehow offered as an opportunity, as maybe a speculative and high-risk investment, but it was part of like your work, you know, investment opportunities, would you say yes? Why not? You know, 1% of what I was going to invest, sure, put it in there. Would you do it? I mean, obviously a lot of you would do it anyways, but you know, could you convince your friends, say, hey, that's worth it? Absolutely. So when people say things like mass adoption, or when people say, you know, barriers to entry like that, it's absolutely, you know, inside our own culture, it's like taboo, it's a bad word, regulation. But it's not going to be for everybody else who hasn't entered. They haven't entered for a reason. Maybe they've never heard of it. Maybe they have heard of it. They saw it drop from 20,000 to 3 like everybody else. But because by the time that most people were asking me, it was, you know, 8, 9, 10. I was like, I wouldn't buy it at 10 because it's probably going to go down as soon as it hits 10, y'all. And guess what? It kept going. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I just cost you a bunch of money. Go ahead and buy it now. That was the wrong thing to say. Because then that's when they started paying attention. So that's what they saw. That's what they know about crypto. But as we pointed out, you know, the longer it's around, the more accepted it is. I've seen this twice now. I wasn't around for the very first rise in fall. I think it was like $3 to 100. And it went like a couple months. And that was back in like 2011, 2012. But anyways, to get to the point here is, regulation to me is absolutely necessary to bring credibility and legitimacy to the space on an investment level, but not on a technology level. And that kind of ties into mass adoption, and you know, some of the things that Rachel was saying is that we're just in a situation where people have a very different impression of what mass adoption is. It's not how much is my Bitcoin going to go up to everybody, and some people it is, how much is my Bitcoin going to go up? That's mass adoption to them. When's my Bitcoin going to be $150,000? That's mass adoption to them. Everybody has a different price, right? So, anyways, I'll stop because I don't want to go into too much exposition, but hopefully that answers that question.
Exactly. So, you know, one thing I want to touch on that both of y'all seem to agree on, and I do as well, is that regulation is necessary in some form or fashion, but not mandatory for the technology to persist as it does right now. And a couple of projects, maybe outside of Bitcoin, that you guys like, just personal ones that maybe we can even get the audience opinion on, that have some working use cases. Would you be willing to share your thoughts on some of those? I know that's really crazy off the top of your head. I mean, I'll start on Ethereum. That's the second most popular one. Obviously, most of y'all have heard of that. The reason many people use Ethereum is because you can build applications on top of it, and that's what gives it its value. But like you've heard today, many people are just wanting to have you know, their portfolio value rise to a certain price. So a lot of what I consider mass adoption is, can the technology that's being developed be used globally, or at least for a specific business, like Ripple, for example. It'll never be mass adopted, but it's used for centralized banking.
So I'll let you answer it, but I'm personally going to take the stance of sort of a pseudo-maximalist in this room, meaning that I believe that it's a winner-take-most, if not a winner-take-all market in cryptocurrencies. And right now, cryptocurrencies are the only use case that has seen adoption. So right now, I say there's no use case going on right now. I mean, obviously Ethereum works, but you know, using it to track shipping containers, that's sort of a use case, but that's not that's sort of incremental innovation. The true radical innovation is the cryptocurrency public aspect, where you can get people who don't know each other to sort of collaborate on a global scale. And Ripple is not a crypto, it's sort of a centralized banking, and that's what those sort of use cases are. They're not really radical innovation. They're sort of just marginal improvements to the bottom line, and that's why I think cryptocurrencies are the most interesting use case and are the killer use case. And when you build a different use case on top of a public chain, that's when it becomes sort of interesting and radical. But yeah, there's one other use case that I do like, MakerDAO, which is another finance use case. So finance is sort of the use case right now for crypto, and MakerDAO allows you to take out decentralized, collateralized loans against your Ethereum holdings. But that's sort of the only ones that I see. It's mostly finance. How about you?
Yeah, well said. Okay, so I'm very careful when I do this. I like a lot of projects. Like, I love different projects in crypto. But I've learned a lot of hard lessons in standing next to or recommending or even promoting it to one degree or the next, if a coin is going to be successful. Because in my opinion, there's only one guarantee, and it's Bitcoin. And the only guarantee that I can give you about Bitcoin is it's going to exist. There's no price range that I believe is going to happen for sure. There is no time frame in which I think Bitcoin is going to happen for sure. Bitcoin already exists. And a point I'll make on Bitcoin that was said earlier, a couple different things, but we're talking about how I think it was you, Richard, who had mentioned that we're just, or maybe even Wayne, when we go and give another country money, we're actually just printing that money and handing it to them. And we're inflating, the ecosystem, right? It's this economical disaster waiting to happen, right? I don't think it's going to happen. We're going to be a disaster tomorrow, but it's just going to slowly decline. And you want to see that slow decline? A bar of 1 ounce gold has never changed value. It's never changed value. That has been the staple, that's the standard, the foundation in which our world exists on a financial basis. It's never once changed value. 1 bar of gold is 1 bar of gold. The same way that you hear 1 Bitcoin equals 1 Bitcoin. People do not associate this. They can't rationalize that it's not worth $1,300 USD or $900 USD. But of course it's changed value, Your dollar, it's deflated. It's losing value. $1 used to be worth 1 gold bar, 1 ounce of gold, right? Does anybody disagree with that? At one point, $1 equaled 1 ounce of gold. What the heck happened? Now it's what, $1,100? We lost $1,100 since that $1 moment? Well, that's how I can look at Bitcoin. We are in a situation right now where Bitcoin, as Richard said earlier, it's deflationary, it's decentralized, it's everything we need to continue to have a standard. It is never going away, period. It's not. And with that, Bitcoin's king. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, but it's not because I don't like other projects. It's because I know Bitcoin is the only reason why we're here. There is no conferences in any city. There's no Joe Blackburn on Facebook CCT without Bitcoin. And if we lost Bitcoin, we wouldn't have anything to replace it except gold. That's it. So to answer your question, I do not have any projects that I'm going to talk about. Outside of the PowerPoints, the top 10, at any given time, if you're going to make it investment for investment purposes only, I would start with the top 10 and look through those. Right? They're the top 10 for a reason. They got enough supporters. It's liquid enough to be able to stay in. You can get out of it. You're not going to get stuck or lose a whole bunch of money, without everything else losing a bunch of money too. So if you're into a speculative investment, and that's all we're talking about, now, most people are in crypto for that. I know I bought my first Bitcoin because I thought it might go up one day. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Most of you probably here for that.
But yeah, that is a use case.
Exactly right.
And to touch on that, Bitcoin has a lot of use cases to a lot of different people. So those in Venezuela, they don't mind the volatility, going up 5-10% every day because they're in 2 weeks. I mean, they see inflation at 100%. And that
saw the picture with them throwing money in there.
Yeah, so that's their use case, is a store of value. Now, if you go to someone who's used to using the dollar, which is relatively stable against other fiat currencies, they're like, Bitcoin is way too volatile for me to store my value in that. And so they use it as they use it as a speculative purpose. And each group of people, say a dictator or someone who wants to hide their wealth offshore, uses it to sort of store their wealth as a bank account. So everyone can find a use case for cryptocurrencies, and that what makes sort of Bitcoin and Ethereum sort of interesting, because you can see what you want to see in that in the technology, and you can pick out what you want what your use case to be.
So very good answers, both. One thing that I have a difficult time separating when people ask me personally is cryptocurrencies and the difference between cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and that one is dependent on the other, but not the other way around. So the quickest example I can give is, you don't need a cryptocurrency to have a blockchain, but you need a blockchain to have a cryptocurrency. Curious if you guys see blockchain projects, both private and public, being more adaptable than cryptocurrencies themselves. A lot of this is focused, we're doing a lot of price talk here, and a lot of people here are very interested in that. And you touched on something earlier, which is liquidity, which of course Bitcoin, you could sell that any moment and cash out pretty easily, but a lot of these projects, maybe not. So I guess where I'm headed is, where do you see, or do you see rather, a gap in understanding between cryptocurrencies and then the underpinning technology, which is blockchain, and that people are associating, like you said, when I said Ripple, you said that's not a cryptocurrency. No, it sure isn't. It's a blockchain technology. But a lot of people here would disagree, or a lot of people anywhere would disagree and simply say, no, well, it's just as much a crypto as anything else because I can trade it against Bitcoin and anything, and all these other cryptocurrencies. So do you guys see blockchain itself being, or cryptocurrency being negatively impactful on the progress of blockchain technology?
Yeah, so I would say, we weren't even talking about blockchain until Bitcoin, and nowhere does Satoshi mention blockchain. That was a moniker that we gave to later. And there is blockchain without crypto. That was the big banks were saying that in like 2015, 2016. They were like blockchain, not Bitcoin. But it's Bitcoin, not blockchain. Without the only reason a blockchain works is because there's a financial incentive for production and security of the network. Without that financial incentive, there's no point in keeping up the network. And that's why the network is so secure now. And that's why it is the most secure network, because there is this financial incentive and this sort of consensus around the protocol. And if you, JPM coin, if they decided to make their own blockchain with their own coin, what is the incentive to run it and secure it? Just JP Morgan, that's one entity has the incentive to run it and secure the network because they're making a split on it, presumably. So that's inherently not as secure as a decentralized version such as Bitcoin, right? So I think without blockchain, a crypto-less blockchain is inherently less secure than a crypto with a blockchain with crypto built into it, because there's a lot of factors, decentralization and et cetera.
Yeah, well said. I completely agree with you on most of everything you just mentioned. I feel like this when it comes to the two. You don't have to separate them. I know people like to separate them, so you're going to have that conversation. But you got Facebook or IBM or whatever. They're all talking about the same thing, which is what Bitcoin started, right? Bitcoin was not even the first cryptocurrency. Some people don't know that. There's like 3 or 4 of them before Bitcoin. Bitcoin just happened to be the one that really took off. And if you go back and talk to the guys that were cypherpunks back in late 90s, I think is when it started, 2000s, early 2000s, you saw this progression into what Bitcoin became because there was a need for it, this decentralized network that would not put us in the situation financially that we are now. The goal of Bitcoin was always financial. It was always to be that way. It was to combat what the banks have done. I don't see any reason to think otherwise. Obviously there's some use cases in blockchain that we've created since. These things, we've created these use cases because there's holes that exist. Without Bitcoin, of course, we're not having this conversation. Just as you said, completely agree. It's not, to me, it's not even one or the other though. They both equally work. And I can debate that with anybody just because it's not that big of a deal. Why are you going to separate it like that? Bitcoin's going to continue to exist. Tell me a currency isn't going to exist. Tell me the reason why. I'm wrong. It's going to continue to exist. You know why? Because I'll keep buying it, and there's a lot of us who will continue to do the same thing. We'll use it. Venezuela will use it, right? So, having this discussion, blockchain technology versus currency, we need to stop that. That needs to be a conversation we need to eliminate because they do work hand in hand. There's not one without the other, in my opinion. They are the same thing.
I think I could say that we're not saying that there is no use case outside of the financial aspect,
Yep.
but without the financial aspect, there will be no other use case, because you can't, basically the incentives don't line up in such a way to perpetuate a chain that has had 99.99998% uptime since January 3rd, 2009. I think the first block was.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, the financial aspect is what sort of drives the security around it. And without that, it will fall apart at some point.
I'll say this to go along with what you said. The one use case I can see immediately, well, there's two really, but the main use case that can be used that has nothing to do with finances is voting. Put every vote that ever happens in any government on blockchain. Guess what? They don't want that to happen. They don't want that to happen because that'll be the truth, you know? And they don't like the truth. With blockchain on a voting register, you know? Like let's go vote on blockchain. That's a use case to me that does not involve money. Well, I mean, you can make arguments with that too, but you know what I'm saying?
Okay, great answers. So at this point, I think we've got about 20 minutes left in the presentation, and I do want to see if the audience has any questions here before we go further. Yes, sir.
What was your, there's two use cases. What was your other one?
Gaming.
Yeah, that is
Fortnite skins, transform.
Yeah, Wax. I don't know if you're familiar with the Wax token, which was meant to be sort of a token to use to exchange like what's it? Counter-Strike skins, crypto kitties, whatever non-fungible token you had, you could use Wax to sort of the Wax exchange to sort of trade it between people. And I mean, yeah, that is one of the killer use cases because the leap to to like add value to a digital item is so easy when you get to the gaming point, and but it's just who's going to be the you know, basically the Google, or who's going to, you know, set the fire that, you know, sort of like catapults the non-fungible tokens into. Right now, I think the scaling is just not there, right? I mean, CryptoKitties blew up in 2018, and it literally brought the Ethereum network to a standstill. It froze the Ethereum network, so people's payments weren't going through, their smart contracts weren't executing because there was a capacity limit. And right now, people are sort of building out that capacity, and then the next CryptoKitties will be able to, you know, be 10x bigger than the previous one, and sort of it's a game of sort of cat and mouse.
Was that Carl who asked that question?
Yeah.
Carl, I got a question for you actually.
Okay.
And I'm going to do it in front of everybody. All my friends already know I'm going to ask you this. So I've been trying to get a hold of Decentraland for like 2 years to do the interview. So I was just wondering, maybe you could find a way to get somebody on the senior executive team to want to do the interview. Is that cool?
One of the Decentraland execs? Possibly. They're
That's not
pretty
good
cool, but send me a message.
Just say yes.
Buy some land first.
I got land. Okay. I'm going to hold you to that. Go ahead, man. Oh, sorry.
And any other questions? Yes.
Finance, voting, both of those eventually need some sort of identification. So would that be the third part of, you know, third killer app or third use case?
Can I touch on this one?
Or is ideal?
Yeah, no. I mean, of course. You know, I should rephrase what I said. Two immediate, non-financial things that have use cases right now is really what I should have said. Because there are exponential, unlimited, and unknown use cases with blockchain outside of what we're just talking about. And I'm not even pretending like there's nothing else besides what I just said that fits into that. Just in my personal opinion, those are two: voting and then gaming. Both of those huge potential, you know, adoption level. On the most extreme adoption level, we could do that, you know, blockchain. So to answer your question, identity-wise, yeah, there's a lot of protection and privacy that can be incorporated through blockchain technology. Of course, that's definitely not my expertise. I don't know if you guys want to answer that, but I wouldn't know enough to say this is how I would do it.
Yeah. I mean, so identity is big. I mean, basically, as Richard said in the introduction, is that every transaction that happens has value to it. Data has value to it. And basically, blockchain is the way to monetize and tokenize that value. So not saying that there is no use case. I mean, there's tracking, ID, notarization, storage, resource rental. So there's a lot of use cases, but the central point of what we're trying to hammer home is that without the financial incentive to support the network, all these use cases fall apart under security pressures because what's going to stop someone from hacking a national voting? I mean, they already hacked a lot of national voting databases to mine, voter records. So identity, there are like Civic's a project I know is looking to do KYC AML at the base layer. So that is an aspect of it, but you sort of need that financial incentive to support it. And with that being said, there are like a lot of interesting technologies now, like zero knowledge proofs that sort of allow you to reveal information about yourself without revealing that information. So I can hide behind this, this curtain and tell you aspects about me, and you would know that it would be 100% true using this technology without actually seeing me. And that's going to be a technology that really opens the pathway to, data management and, sort of personal identification, all this stuff, yeah. So once those technologies become more mature, I think we'll start seeing solutions that allow for you to be sort of anonymous without, not anonymous, like fully transparent, but in complete privacy, if that makes sense. It's really hard to explain. Yeah, it really is. I mean, can you explain to us, like...
You handled great. I was just thinking this, going forward, our future holds our data as like the most precious resource that companies can get, right? Your data, that's what people want. I mean, heck, company come to me, what is a person's data worth to a company, one person? I think I heard somewhere along the lines it could be worth between $20 to $220 per person. That's what they're willing to spend at times, depending on the audience and what they're trying to do. So when a company goes and they try to acquire your data, or a company takes your data and then they sell it off because you agree to that, because nobody reads the user agreements or cares that somebody else is selling their data by chance, we're over here sitting here like kind of like whatever, right? Until we get hacked, right? Or until somebody else gets hacked and we're the consequence, and all of a sudden, oh, we're going to sue you. But all the while, we're just not aware of this stuff. Nobody cares because it's easy for us just to click, yeah, I'm going to go do this. Oh, Facebook, is going to sell my stuff to Cambridge Analytics. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of mad about it, but overall, everybody got hacked, so we're all kind of not mad about it together. We're just kind of socially mad. But I mean, I'm saying this for a reason, and this is it: is that if a company came to me and said, "Hey, I'll give you $20, give me your email address." Yeah, okay, here you go. Here's a fake email address, right? Well, they don't want that. They want organic stuff. They don't want to go and pay me. They don't want to go pay even you. You learned that. They want it like organically. They want it because they want it raw, natural data, because we're going to lie about it. Surely there's a way on the blockchain that you could kind of say, here's my honest to God email. Here's my honest to God, gender. And here's what my dynamic is. And this is what I like. And here's my interests. Well, what if we did that and we could give permission? I don't know how I feel about that, but it would be a lot easier to do that than sit around and wait for the next email and say I got hacked, or this company got hacked. But I guess, thinking about data, thinking about identity theft, thinking about all this stuff, who actually cares here? Who cares? Does anybody know to care? I mean, I care. I honest to God care. And I know some of my moderators care, and they're not raising their hand because they don't want to act. But, this is really important to us going forward. Data is so important. It's yours. It belongs to you. Don't give it away. I mean, you might not be able to use certain websites, but we got to fix this. That's what blockchain is going to do for us. It's going to fix our data problem long term. But they don't want that, man. That's the thing. You've got to remember, they don't want this to happen. Sorry, I was kind of ramble on.
To build on what you're saying as far as data management, this technology, to go to the fundamental of this technology, is that it is a push transaction, meaning that you're pushing the payment out. When you swipe your credit card, that is a full transaction. You're not. When you type in your PIN, you're not sending the payment. The merchant is actually pulling the payment from your account, so they can pull more than what you approve them to pull. But with blockchain, you can say, okay, I'm sending this exact amount out of my account. And when you extrapolate that to a higher level and you put data, then you can push your data out and only reveal the data that you want to reveal by, pushing out your account, as opposed to Facebook just going in and pulling sort of your data from the Excel spreadsheet.
This gets so deep too. Like, you're so right about that. It's just a really deep topic, and it's something I really encourage everybody. If you're not aware of it and how important your data is, please go and research it. Like, go research it for you, because it really matters, right?
So I'm gonna chime in there very quickly, because you touched on Cambridge Analytica and Facebook, and I'll go ahead and mention a good friend of mine, Brittany Kaiser, is the Cambridge Analytica associate that outed Facebook for all the data that they're having, and she just released a film at Sundance. They've been following her for a year now. It comes on Netflix in July. Her hashtag, her title is Own Your Data. She left Cambridge Analytica after all this political mess and everything, and after the Facebook stuff, and has gone full-time blockchain. And her entire message is about owning your own personal data. Look out for the documentary, and again, her name's Brittany Kaiser. It's pretty incredible. If you just Google her on Facebook, she's actually on the Trump, she's been subpoenaed and everything like that to go give testimony and all this wonderfully amazing stuff, but she is full-time blockchain because of data privacy. And she actually came from Cambridge Analytica saying, this is wrong, and I've got to do something about it.
I heard something about Brittany too, and I got a chance to meet her in New York last year for Consensus, but I heard she the new campaign manager for Bernie Sanders?
No comment.
Well, is that a secret?
I mean,
I've just heard it from several different people.
Sure, she's not specifically running for anyone right now. She's being asked. I don't want
I
to.
shouldn't have put that on.
No. It's all good. It's not on a blockchain. It's not immutable. But
Redacted tapes.
no. But this individual person that we're referencing, she is the one that blew open the doors of here's the data that Cambridge Analytica captured. Here's what we were selling to Facebook. Here's what we were selling to politicians on both sides of the aisle. And it was just crazy. Her and a Canadian gentleman as well. So this Netflix documentary will really be quite interesting about owning your data. That's what it's all about. I do want to touch on, I know you got a question, I'll hit that really quickly. I want to touch on a use case, and maybe you guys will argue against it, but a non-financial one that I see the blockchain for, and this is data and supply chain related. And of course, there are some financial gains involved, but not for the masses. There's no real reason for the masses to adopt this other than a social good project, we'll call it. I had the privilege to go over to Vietnam, which is a third world country in all regards. If you would think about it, once you get over there, you realize it's not. Much like Africa, never really developed 56K phone lines or anything. They just went straight to wireless because why would you implement old technology when this awesome new stuff already exists? What's happening in Vietnam, even the restaurants that you go eat at, these 5-star Michelin restaurants, the food that they have is coming from the local markets every single day, and these markets, the farmers are taking them in, miles and miles from the middle of farmland, and you don't know where it's coming from. And the government actually is working on a project over there and funding. I think they're up to well over 100 hectares of farmland that they are tokenizing every coffee bean, every grain of rice, everything that they're growing, so that these farmers can actually put what they're growing on the blockchain, and they can orders can be placed at the market, which does two things. It reduces spoilage, and then it provides the transparency and the clarity that shows here's exactly the farm that your your beef came from, your coffee came from. So on those ends, and countries like Estonia and places like Dubai that has promised that the government itself will be a smart city by 2020. Obviously, they are finance driven, even the project in Vietnam, but I think a lot of it is social good.
Yeah, and I think millennials will be a large group that sort of drive that sort of transparency. Food, where is the source of my food, the source of my clothing, where is that? And I think consumers now are starting to demand to know, is this sustainable? And if so, prove it to me. And I think that blockchain will be able to sort of drive that.
Agreed. Don't forget, transparency is not the word that blockchain's really, solving an issue for. It's accountability. It's the end of transparency. It's not ending transparency, but what the result of the transparency is. It's accountability. That's very different than what we're used to hearing in blockchain and this echo chamber sometimes that we're in. We want transparency. I say it all the time. It's kind of a buzzword in crypto, but it's really about accountability. And it's like, Richard, let me ask you a question. What's mass adoption mean to you?
Everybody should know about cryptocurrency and then tell other people.
Why?
Because the more people,
What are they going to tell them?
why cryptocurrency and blockchain, you need to be paying attention to the opportunities.
Yeah, and the same reason I said earlier, and we talked about it a little bit last night, is because we want to improve our financial situation, right? That's what everybody wants out of crypto. Like, there's not a person in this room that doesn't want Bitcoin to go up. I hope, unless you got short open Ben. Ben loves a short Bitcoin. He actually calls it Pouncey all the time. As a joke.
But at least he's putting his money where his mouth is.
He's probably trading right now. Look at it.
A lot of people come on TV to bash Bitcoin, but then you ask them to short it, and they're nowhere to be found.
Agreed. It's dangerous to short. It's dangerous to go long right now too. But what I'm getting at is this: is that I'm sorry, I'll edge you up. Is that we all want this to go up, but that's not mass adoption in my mind. Mass adoption is literally accountability. That's when I say it. That's what I mean. When you say it, you need to make sure that you're very clear what you mean when you say mass adoption. Although, you know, simple conversation is not hard, it's easy to talk about and say mass adoption, yeah. But accountability is what I mean, right? What does it mean for you? Right? Yeah, sorry.
No worries. Great answer. That's exactly what it is. Accountability, not transparency. I just wanted to make sure you were heard with your question.
Yeah, so quick question. I mean, we're talking about the future of cryptocurrency, and Jake, you kind of talked about this a little bit indirectly. You know, privacy is a big key, right? We're talking about data. A lot of us want to have that privacy option. Some people don't. Some people will give away all their data just to figure out what kind of unicorn they're on Facebook. But at the end of the day, we're talking about the future of cryptocurrency. Privacy coins is one that. How do you guys feel that's going to play into the future of cryptocurrency as a panelist?
Yeah. So as we said, Bitcoin is number one, hands down. Largest market cap. The free market has voted, and it says Bitcoin. Now, if Bitcoin does not implement a fully privacy or privacy by default, there will be a market for privacy coins because, I mean, there is a market, and it's, what I'm thinking is it's sort of like all the drinks in America are kosher, right? Not because we're all kosher, but because there's a small minority of us who happen to be kosher, and it's easy just to create the drink and it'd be compliant. And I think there's a small bit of us who want privacy at all costs, maybe even a larger percentage. And eventually, if you want that to be, if you want to have that group in your sort of cryptocurrency community, you would have to have a privacy feature. And the ones that have it, by default, baked into the base layer, will be the ones who sort of gather that steam. I would like to see Bitcoin implement privacy at the base layer because right now the fungibility issue with Bitcoin is not going to be good for it in the end game. So for sure, I like the privacy coins. Zcash, nice, but it's very inflationary right now because it's 50 Zcash per block. I'd rather mine it, but Monero, with Dash is a pre-mine.
It's grinding, like the new.
Yeah, the Mimblewimble.
Oh yeah, great. Yeah, that is interesting. Still improving in my book. I'd like to see a little bit more meat on those bones, but until then.
I thought you made a really good point. If you are just a privacy coin and that's all you're trying to market, like let's say Monero, right? I know people who just don't care about Monero because it kind of sounds sketchy, right? If your focus is only privacy, you're going to attract a privacy group, a group that's going to be privacy focused. But there's a lot of people who don't care about that, just as you said. It's not a coin that's going to be, I'm private, so I'm going to be completely anonymous, and therefore we're going to take over the whole world. Why wouldn't you want to use us? Well, that's what a person who's seeking anonymity or a person who's seeking, lack of transparency wants. Everybody else just simply doesn't care unless they need it one time. Right? They might go use that coin one time because it offers a mode to be transparent. But the ones that are going to be successful are going to be, it's going to be baked in, just like you said. That's the easiest way to say it. So I completely agree with everything you said. You probably shouldn't have said that to begin with.
But yeah, so long story short, privacy is going to, that is just to sort of almost wrap it up into the future of cryptocurrencies. The end game is a fully, users manage their data, financial independence. You're able to invest in companies or real estate or assets that you feel you should be able to without having to be accredited. Why do I need to have $1 million? I'm just as smart or as anybody else as on the table, right? And that's sort of what the innovation is. And eventually, we will have this sort of accountability. We will have sort of, self-sovereign data, self-sovereign money, and then it basically is going to culminate to privacy by default, and everything. People will just really start to value privacy more because they don't really understand how much you're giving up when you reveal that, and they won't understand it until they do. No one really cared that much about You know, no one was the great financial crisis was maybe one of the best things to happen to our generation, because now it's sort of waking people up to you know, sort of smell what's cooking.
Okay. So maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but don't we have a discrepancy between the idea of privacy by default and accountability? So look, I make a transaction, send it to you, it's private. Nobody else in the world can know that that transaction happened. How is that accountable?
No, you're right, absolutely. A private where nobody knows, I might as well just hand you like a dollar bill in cash, right? Nobody knows. No one's gonna check that serial number. No one's gonna know to even check their own serial numbers in their own group, right? Just coupling that to with what you said, the discrepancy, the difference in my opinion is this, is that when you're making a transaction on a peer-to-peer level, unless somebody knows you're doing something wrong, it's not an issue. But that's not what we're typically talking about. I think you understand what I mean when I say this, when, you know, the privacy needed when you are doing a transaction that needs to be private. Maybe when you're committing a crime or trying to avoid taxes, right? That's what people in privacy networks oftentimes will do. They'll do that. Some people will say and they'll claim, hey, look, I'm over here in this privacy world because I don't want anybody to know, it's none of your business. And they'll always complain, if I'm not doing anything wrong, no one needs to see this. I don't disagree with that. You deserve the right to be private in those circumstances. And if you want to use a privacy coin like Monero that's going to wipe any trace of the transaction and no one's going to know what happened, so be it. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. As long as it doesn't affect me or affect anybody around me or my family, I'm okay with that. But as privacy coins go, the ones that are going to be successful are either like Monero's already been here for some time. I don't think we're going to make a transition to another big one because we already have Bitcoin. Most people don't care about privacy. They might want their private transactions, you know, disguised for a certain circumstance, and they may go to Monero for that, right? Maybe they're trying to avoid taxes, which I do not condone. But that's like the only reason why I know some people would ever want to use that. So I guess like what I'm saying is more so, you're thinking on a deeper level. I'm speaking about it to a group in my head that is on a lower level, not because they're dumber, just because they're not as experienced as you, Carl. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, accountability
No, it
is
doesn't make sense.
to hold somebody accountable to something. So I say, you know, please, Carl, can you cut the grass on my Decentraland plot? And then you say you did it, and then it's not cut. And then I say, I'm holding you accountable now, saying this grass needs to be, you didn't cut it. I can see that you didn't cut it. So, and that's a private transaction between us. So, I mean, privacy doesn't violate the accountability. Accountability is usually, I mean, it can either be baked into the protocol, depending on what you're trying to hold people accountable to, or it's on the social consensus layer, which is like the abstraction from...
So I think that an important app for the future is what are sometimes called oracles. The proof that something happened available to smart contracts, so that the mowing of the lawn itself is tokenized. So I can say, I'm going to put $100 into this lawn mowing contract, and if you actually mow it, you'll get it. If you don't, it'll come back to you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the kind of accountability I think we want. The other one that people
For sure, I completely agree with that, by the way.
Another one people talk about is, I give money to a charity, I want to really know where that money went, right?
Yeah, and I really would like to see that. That's one of the greater use cases, is to really just say, hey, we're a charity, we're taking in, you know, Bitcoin donations, and you can track every single wallet of every single, you know, one of our subsidiaries or
But I
others.
have no idea who those wallets are.
Oh, but they can say that these are our wallets.
It's really interesting.
True. Yeah, but then, I mean, I think it takes us back to like the social consensus layer. I mean, it's all technology, but it's still humans, right? I mean, Bitcoin wouldn't have any value without human greed, right? That it's, I mean, they're basically, I mean, it wouldn't, I mean, it will not hold. There's this good post by Hugo Nguyen, great post where he breaks down Bitcoin in 3 layers. The first layer is the sort of, I wouldn't say, was it thermodynamics or random? So randomness. So it's built by random numbers, so it's hashing. So it's built on randomness. Every 10 minutes, a random number is generated that fits the criteria of the protocol, and then, you know, 12.5 Bitcoin is created. And then the next layer is sort of, well, actually before that, the energy. Another layer to it is the energy layer, taking literal energy, coal, wind, hydro, electric, and then turning it into something digital. That's the process of mining. It's basically taking, you know, the currency of the universe, energy, and turning it into a digital artifact. And that digital artifact now has money because it now has value because it took energy and cost to produce it. And then us on the social layer, we're saying, oh, now that this person put in labor to produce this asset, it now has value.
After the response to that.
For me, in my standpoint, being community management and a lot of stuff, I would just say get involved. You've heard a lot today, the discussions about meetup groups, Telegram channels, things like that. Reach out to us. I'm sure reach out to Richard. We'll have there's plenty of information out there. But the only real way that you're going to learn and grow with it is to be involved in your local community. That's a lot of the reason why we're here today.
I would say, one, thank you, Richard, for bringing this to New Orleans. And I think everyone who is local here, I would implore you to sort of spread the word, try to educate people, and really try to build this up, because it is a global technology. It doesn't matter if you're in Silicon Valley, Copenhagen, Singapore, it doesn't matter. You can engage in this technology anywhere, and I think this is the first step towards sort of showing grassroots community here in New Orleans. And to leave you off on like a note, I think do your own research for sure. Don't trust, verify, I think is the saying, as the saying goes. So always do your own research and dig into don't just take anyone's word for it. Because then when you become educated, that's when you're sort of truly dangerous in this space. And yeah, I think, as I said, I think it's a winner-take-all market. Bitcoin is going to be number one for quite some time. I know, like, some people used to like to say that, Linux is beaten by, they use the software approach to tell you that Bitcoin will be usurped by another coin. So I'll leave you with two things that says that that's not going to happen. The first being, if a new technology does usurp Bitcoin, what's to stop that new technology from being usurped by another technology? So once that happens, people lose faith in the leading technology, therefore devaluing it. So basically, they're not going to trust the new one because the last one just left, right? So you're not going to trust the next one because the other one just, So basically, that's one reason to argue that it will be, around. And the second reason is that sort of like, I think someone had a good point, but it's sort of like the English language is sort of the default language in speaking, right? The internet is sort of the default communication protocol. And basically, before the fiat money system, gold was sort of the default medium of exchange. And basically, with Bitcoin, now we have a digital form of gold, and people will gravitate towards the most transparent, the easiest to use medium of exchange. And that is not the US dollar, because you have to convert it, as Richard was saying earlier. But basically, people will gravitate towards a superior medium, and there will only be one, because if there isn't one, then you still have a barter economy. Because if there isn't one, then I still have to trade someone something else in order to get whatever else I want. So it basically will, is it Bitcoin as it stands currently? Definitely not, but is it the Bitcoin of the future, with all these added bells and whistles? Yes, certainly.
Well said. Richard, I'll reiterate what he said. Awesome job, man. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for I'm a Southerner, I'm not a Louisiana, I guess, resident or NOLA resident. I'm a resident of the state of Mississippi, but, I consider NOLA the closest city to me, and I consider this place home to an extent. And, I'll come to every one of these, and I'm so proud of what you've done. So congratulations on that, and I hope you feel very, very proud for what you've been able to accomplish. Final thought would be this: great job on moderation. Jake, it's a pleasure to stand next to you on here. I'm really proud of everybody who showed up. It's really wonderful to see you support this. It's necessary, though. It's the groundwork. Even just showing up is the groundwork. No one else is doing it. If you don't do it, who is going to do it, right? Richard stood up. What if Richard hadn't done this right here? Who would have done it? I don't think anybody would have done that, right? Don't be the person who doesn't do it, because you're letting me down. And I've done a lot for this space. I have. I've trial by fire. There's a lot of people who've done a lot for this space. There's a lot of people in this room who've done a lot for the space. It's our responsibility. It's not Joe's. It's not Carl's or Jake's or whoever. Forrest. It's ours, all of us. What do you think happened the first time a government told their citizen, hey, give me your gold, I'm going to give you this piece of paper? Seriously? Exactly. So don't forget, we're perfectly fine with a paper money system. I mean, if I'm honest, a lot of my goals are to get more money, right? I mean, that's at least half my goals. And hopefully one day I will. But the first time the government said, here, Richard, I'm going to take your gold, but you're going to, in return, get these, George Washingtons, because they're worth $1. You're probably a little skeptical, or that person was. That's how the person you're speaking to feels about Bitcoin. Don't forget it. Learn how to explain it, and learn how to be patient as people start to comprehend. That is also a responsibility of all of us, to not get mad. You don't have to defend Bitcoin. It's been around for 10 years.
Yeah, it's a long game. It's a long game. Markets will come and go.
If they don't believe in it, just wait. You'll be right. But learn how to explain it and learn not to be overly aggressive in defense. You don't have to be. It's already stood the test of time, in my opinion. It's not going away anytime soon. I hope it goes down to 1 penny. I'll buy all of them. Cheer. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Hello. All right, everyone. So this has been the inaugural Cryptocurrent Conference. I hope you had an absolute blast. I hope you got a lot of phenomenal just information that you can use in your own life and be able to bring back to your own communities, bring back to the New Orleans community and wherever else that you came from. I have a couple last minute just special thank yous. First of all, I want to thank all my speakers who came here. I sincerely appreciate you being here, taking the time to be here and educate everyone who came through here today. I just sincerely appreciate your time and for making this a success. Next, I want to thank all the sponsors. I really want to thank Leff Ventures, Idea Village, Tech Talent South, Launchpad, from No Crypto to No Crypto, and all of my promotional media sponsors that help spread the word. Because the thing about cryptocurrency and blockchain is everything is organic, everything has been word of mouth. If you're here, it is purely because you either went to one of our websites or someone told you about it. Right now, we cannot pay to promote because it's blacklisted, right? So I can't pay to promote on social media. All I can do is put out the information, talk to amazing people, and let it spread that way. So this is going to continue to grow. This will continue to get bigger. I'm going to continue to make sure that this event is put on and watch this room continue to fill up and just explode. I also want to thank one of my board member, Victoria Adams. She ran Knowing multiple years, and when I first started with this, I was trying to get information on how do you throw a conference. She sat down with me for an hour and a half and just gave me a blueprint of, hey, this is what you do. And I sincerely appreciate her taking the time to sit down with me and just give me a blueprint to work on this. This is my first conference event that I've ever done. Everything that you've kind of seen put up here took a lot of effort and energy, so I'm glad to be able to see it all come together. But I would not be here today, period, without the help of everyone else, without the help of my sponsors, without the help of the board advisors and everyone else in here who has showed up. And last but not least, there's two more. I want to thank New Orleans Jazz Market for letting me host this event. I mean, look at this venue, y'all. This is a great venue. This is a really, really cool spot. And right after this, we actually don't have to leave till 5, so we're open to the bar, keep networking, keep having a great time, and then after that, we'll find another spot to go to after that, but stick around and network and have fun with each other. But last but not least, I want to thank all of you. You made the choice to be here today, and that is special. You'll always have a special place in my heart for wanting to be a part of this, to want to learn more, and to further the knowledge and further the conversation on cryptocurrency and blockchain. So again, thank you so much for being here, and I hope you enjoyed yourself. Thank you.
Radio. Please use available exits now.